The second week of the invasion brought a revelation that shook the Zephyrian Empire to its core. Humans were learning, not just adapting to alien tactics, but actually improving upon alien technology in ways that defied every principle of conventional warfare. In underground laboratories scattered across the globe, human scientists were dissecting captured Zephyrian equipment and finding weaknesses that should have been impossible to exploit. Dr. Raj Patel worked in a converted subway station beneath Mumbai, surrounded by the wreckage of an alien scout ship that had crashed during the first wave of attacks. His team had been working around the clock to understand the propulsion system, and what they discovered changed everything. The alien engines operate on quantum field manipulation. Patel explained to the international team of scientists connected via encrypted satellite link. But they're using a brute force approach that wastes enormous amounts of energy. We can build something smaller, more efficient, and 10 times more maneuverable. What the Zephyrians had failed to understand was that human technology had developed along a completely different evolutionary path. Where alien engineering emphasized overwhelming power and redundancy, human designs focused on efficiency and adaptability. The combination was proving devastating. Commander Vextar stood in his command center, staring at reports that contradicted everything he knew about warfare. Human forces were now using weapons that combined Zephyrian technology with principles the Empire had never considered. Worse, these hybrid systems were proving superior to pure Zephyrian designs in actual combat. "Explain to me," Vextar demanded of his chief engineer, "how a primitive species with no understanding of quantum mechanics has managed to improve upon technology we've perfected over millennia." Engineer Prime Zedkoth's tentacles writhed in distress. "Sir, the human approach to technology is ... chaotic. They combine incompatible systems, ignore safety protocols, and use materials in ways they were never intended to be used. By all logic, their modifications should fail catastrophically." "But they don't fail," Vextar observed coldly. "No, sir, they don't." What Zedkoth couldn't explain to his commander was that human technological development had been shaped by scarcity and competition. Every human design had to be better, cheaper, and more efficient than what came before it. Alien technology, developed by a species that had never faced serious opposition, was optimized for power rather than innovation. Captain Maria Santos crouched in the ruins of Barcelona, watching through binoculars as an alien patrol approached her position. Her unit was equipped with the latest generation of hybrid weapons devices that looked like they had been assembled from spare parts and alien wreckage. Because that's exactly what they were. "Remember," she whispered into her comm unit, "their armor is designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. But it's not designed to handle both simultaneously." The weapon in Santos's hands was a perfect example of human ingenuity. It fired a conventional bullet wrapped in an energy field that destabilized alien armor plating. The combination should have been impossible according to Zephyrian science. But human engineers had made it work through sheer bloody-minded determination. The patrol walked into the ambush with the confidence of soldiers who had never faced effective resistance. That confidence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Santos's unit opened fire with weapons that the aliens couldn't understand or counter. Energy shields that had protected Zephyrian soldiers on 17 worlds failed against attacks. That came from directions and dimensions they had never had to consider, but the real surprise came when the surviving aliens tried to retreat. Human forces had spent the past week studying alien movement patterns, communication protocols, and tactical doctrine. They had identified weaknesses that the Zephyrians themselves didn't know existed. "Activate signal scramblers," Santos ordered, around the battlefield. Devices cobbled together from alien communication equipment and human electronics began broadcasting on frequencies that disrupted Zephyrian coordination. The retreating soldiers found themselves cut off from their command structure, unable to call for support or even navigate back to their base. This was happening simultaneously across 6 continents. Human forces were no longer simply resisting the invasion, they were turning alien advantages against themselves. In orbit above Earth, Vexstar's fleet was experiencing problems that defied explanation. Ships that had operated flawlessly for decades were suffering mysterious system failures. Navigation computers were providing incorrect coordinates. Communication arrays were picking up phantom signals that disrupted fleet coordination. What the Zephyrian commander didn't know was that humanity's resistance had reached into space itself. Colonel David Kim floated in the cramped confines of a modified space shuttle that shouldn't have been able to survive in the combat zone around Earth, but human engineers had learned to think like their enemies while retaining their own creative advantages. Insertion point confirmed. Kim reported to Mission Control hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Deploying electronic warfare package? Kim's shuttle was invisible to Zephyrian sensors because it combined alien stealth technology with human electronic countermeasures. The combination created a signature that alien systems literally couldn't process. Their computers simply ignored it as impossible data. The package Kim deployed was even more ingenious. It was a virus, but not in any sense the Zephyrians could understand. Human computer scientists had discovered that alien systems used quantum processing methods that were incredibly powerful but also incredibly vulnerable to certain types of logical paradoxes. The virus was pure information warfare, a set of mathematical concepts that caused Zephyrian quantum processors to lock up while trying to resolve problems that had no solution. It was like feeding a computer the question, can an omnipotent being create a stone so heavy that even they cannot lift it? And watching it crash while trying to compute the answer. Within hours, the virus had spread through the Zephyrian fleet's communication network. Ships began experiencing cascading system failures as their own processors turned against them. But humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology at all. It was something that the Zephyrian Empire, in all their conquests, had never encountered. Imagination. Dr. Lisa Chun worked in a converted coal mine in West Virginia, leading a team that was developing what they called impossible weapons, devices that shouldn't work according to known physics, but did anyway because human engineers refused to accept that impossible meant anything the aliens think in terms of established scientific principles. Chun explained to her team. They assume that if something violates their understanding of physics, it can't exist. That's their weakness. Chun's latest creation was a perfect example. It was a device that created localized gravity distortions by using alien technology in ways that alien engineers had never considered. The device was crude, dangerous, and violated several laws of physics. It also turned alien spacecraft into twisted metal sculptures. The beauty of the human approach, Chun continued, is that we don't care if something should be impossible. We only care if it works. This philosophy was spreading through human resistance forces like wildfire. All across Earth, engineers and scientists were creating weapons, tools, and tactics that existed in the gaps between what aliens thought was possible and what humans could actually accomplish. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 worlds by following proven strategies and using overwhelming technological superiority. They had never faced an enemy that could innovate faster than they could adapt. Commander Kethvil stood before Vexstar's throne, delivering a report that he knew would not be well received. Sir, our ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation from all major population centers. Human resistance has evolved beyond anything we can effectively counter. Evolved? Vexstar's four eyes focused on his subordinate with predatory intensity. Yes, sir. They're no longer using the tactics we prepared for. They're creating new methods of warfare faster than we can develop countermeasures. Our soldiers are facing weapons and strategies that didn't exist a week ago. Vexstar was silent for a long moment. In 17 previous conquests, resistance had followed predictable patterns. Native species fought with their own traditional methods, which could be studied, understood, and countered. But humans seem to invent entirely new forms of combat every few days. Show me, he commanded. The tactical display showed battles raging across Earth's surface. but they bore no resemblance to conventional warfare. Human forces were using tactics that combined ancient military principles with bleeding-edge technology. Often in the same engagement. In the ruins of Rome, human soldiers used alien energy weapons alongside medieval siege tactics. In the Amazon rainforest, tribes armed with hybrid technology conducted warfare that combined Stone Age hunting methods with Space Age equipment. In the urban ruins of Detroit, engineers had turned alien terraforming equipment into city-sized traps that could capture entire battalions. How do we fight an enemy that refuses to fight the way wars are supposed to be fought? Kethel asked. It was a question that would haunt the Zephyrian Empire for generations to come. But humans weren't just innovating in weapons and tactics. They were doing something that the Zephyrian fleet hung in Earth's orbit like metal vultures waiting to feast. Commander Vexstar studied the blue-green planet through the viewing screen of his flagship, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Intelligence reports had been clear. This world was populated by a primitive species, called humans, who had barely mastered chemical propulsion and nuclear fission. Their weapons were crude, their military tactics simplistic, and their technology laughably outdated. "Begin the invasion protocol," Vexstar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 worlds before this one. "Deploy the atmospheric processors and prepare the ground forces. This should be over within 3 planetary rotations." The Zephyrian Empire had perfected the art of conquest over millennia. They were methodical, efficient, and utterly ruthless. Their strategy was always the same: overwhelm the planet's defense systems, destroy key infrastructure, and force surrender through superior technology. It had worked on every world they had encountered. What Vexstar didn't understand was that humans were different. From every species the Zephyrians had faced before, the first wave of attack ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their energy shields shimmering as they approached major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, all would fall simultaneously, crushing human morale and eliminating their leadership in one decisive stroke. President Martinez sat in the emergency bunker beneath the White House, surrounded by military advisors and world leaders connected via secure communication links. The alien ships had appeared without warning, their technology clearly superior to anything Earth possessed. Conventional wisdom suggested immediate surrender negotiations. "Mr. President," General Thompson said grimly, "our satellites are being systematically destroyed. Their energy weapons cut through our most advanced fighters like paper. We're facing complete technological supremacy." Martinez looked at the faces on the screens around him: the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of Russia, leaders from every corner of the globe. They all showed the same expression, fear mixed with grim determination. "Have they attempted communication?" Martinez asked. "Yes, sir," Admiral Chun replied. "They've broadcast a simple message in multiple languages: surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. Comply or face extinction." The president was quiet for a moment, then stood up slowly. "Send them our response. Earth does not surrender. Come and take it." The alien ships began their assault with precision strikes on military installations. Nuclear missile silos erupted in balls of fire as energy beams found their targets. Air Force bases became smoking craters. Naval vessels vanished beneath superheated water as orbital bombardment turned harbors into boiling cauldrons. But something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking human resistance, the attacks only seemed to harden it. In underground bunkers and hidden command centers, human military leaders began implementing protocols that had never been used before. Every major military power had contingency plans for alien invasion, theoretical strategies developed by brilliant minds who had spent decades studying the possibility. Now those theories would be put to the ultimate test. Colonel Sarah Hayes crouched in the ruins of what had been Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado. Her unit had barely escaped the initial bombardment, but they were far from defeated. Around her, soldiers worked frantically to establish mobile communication networks. using equipment that had been stored in hardened bunkers specifically for this scenario. "The bastards think they've won because they destroyed our fancy toys," she muttered into her radio. "They have no idea what they've actually done." What the Zephyrians had done was awaken something that had been dormant in humanity for generations. The primal instinct for survival against impossible odds. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey across vast distances, adapting to any environment, and finding solutions to problems that should have been impossible to solve. The aliens had superior technology, but they had underestimated human ingenuity. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked in a makeshift laboratory in the subway tunnels beneath MIT. Above ground, Boston burned under alien bombardment. But below, the brightest minds in science and engineering had gathered to study fragments of alien technology recovered from the first wave of attacks. Their energy shields operate on a frequency we've never seen before, she explained to her team. But every shield has to have a resonance point, a frequency where it becomes unstable. We just need to find it. Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. In London, engineers were reverse engineering alien propulsion systems. In Tokyo, computer scientists were analyzing alien communication protocols. In underground facilities from Sydney to Stockholm, human scientists were doing what they did best: learning, adapting, and innovating under pressure. The Zephyrians, meanwhile, were growing frustrated. Their intelligence had suggested that humans would surrender after the first demonstration of overwhelming force. Instead, resistance seemed to be organizing and growing stronger. Vexstar studied the tactical displays in his command center. His ships controlled Earth's orbital space and could strike any target on the planet's surface. But the humans had proven surprisingly elusive. They had gone underground, scattered into small units, and begun conducting what their military called guerrilla warfare. "They refuse to engage our forces directly," reported Sub-Commander Kethville. "Instead, they attack our supply lines, sabotage our equipment, and disappear before we can respond. It's frustrating." "They're insects," Vexstar snarled. "Pests to be exterminated. Increase the bombardment intensity. Target their population centers more aggressively. Break their will to fight." But breaking human will had never been as simple as applying more force. In fact, increased pressure often had the opposite effect. Lieutenant Marcus Johnson led a squad of Marines through the ruins of downtown Denver. They were on their way to plant explosive charges on an alien communication array that had been set up in what used to be a shopping mall. His men moved with the fluid coordination of predators, using techniques perfected in conflicts across Earth. "Remember," Johnson whispered into his comm unit, "these aliens have better weapons and armor, but they've never faced anything like us. They think in terms of static defenses and overwhelming firepower. They don't understand asymmetric warfare." The squad reached their target without being detected. The alien guards stood at their posts with mechanical precision, following predictable patrol patterns. They had conquered 17 worlds using the same tactics. And they couldn't adapt to an enemy that fought differently, Johnson's explosives expert. Sergeant Kim studied the alien technology with professional interest. "Their gear is incredible," she whispered, "but it's over-engineered. Too many systems, too many failure points. Give me 5 minutes and I can turn their own technology against them." That was perhaps the greatest advantage humans possessed: adaptability. Every other species the Zephyrians had conquered fought using their own native tactics and technologies. Humans, however, had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting to new environments, learning from enemies, and incorporating foreign techniques into their own strategies. Within hours of the first alien landing, human forces were already using captured Zephyrian weapons. Within days, they were modifying alien technology for their own purposes. Within weeks, they would be building hybrid systems that combined human ingenuity with alien engineering, but the most important human advantage wasn't technological, it was psychological. In a hidden command bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, General Patricia Walsh coordinated with resistance cells across 6 continents. The aliens had expected to face a unified military force that could be defeated through conventional means. Instead, they were fighting a hydra that seemed to grow two heads for every one they cut off. The beauty of human military doctrine, Walsh explained to her staff, is that it's based on the assumption that we're fighting someone bigger and stronger than us. Every strategy, every tactic, every piece of equipment is designed around the idea of overcoming superior force through superior thinking. The general pointed to a map showing alien positions across the globe. The Zephyrians conquered 17 worlds before ours, but they did it the same way every time. They're not innovators. They're followers of protocol. That's about to become their weakness. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, Vextar found himself facing an unprecedented situation. His forces controlled Earth's skies and seas, but the planet's surface remained stubbornly unconquered. Human forces had melted away like mist, only to reform and strike back when least expected. "Sir," Kethval reported nervously, "we've lost contact with 3 ground units." They were investigating what appeared to be abandoned human military installations. "How do we lose contact with units equipped with our most advanced communication systems?" Vextar demanded. "The humans appear to have repurposed our own technology against us. They're using our communication frequencies to broadcast false orders and jamming signals." Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed. In 17 previous conquests, no species had ever demonstrated the ability to rapidly adapt their enemy's technology for their own use. It should have been impossible without. The third week of the invasion marked the point when the Zephyrian Empire realized they had made the greatest strategic error in their history. They had not invaded a planet, they had awakened a force that would reshape the galaxy itself. Commander Vextar stood in his command center aboard the flagship Dominion, watching displays that showed something impossible. Human forces were winning. Not just surviving, not just resisting, but actually pushing back against the most powerful military force in known space. "Sir," Subcommander Kethval reported with trembling voice, "we've lost orbital control over the North American continent. Human forces have somehow managed to deploy space-based weapons platforms that are superior to our own." "How?" Vextar demanded. "They had no space-based infrastructure when we arrived. They built it, sir. From the wreckage of our own ships, combined with their primitive launch systems and some kind of hybrid technology we don't understand. The platforms are using our own weapons against us, but with modifications that make them more effective than our original designs." What Kethval couldn't explain to his commander was that humanity had done something no other species in Galactic history had accomplished. They had not just adapted alien technology, but had actually improved upon it using principles the aliens had never considered. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero gravity of a space station that shouldn't have existed. Built from the wreckage of 17 Zephyrian vessels and launched using a combination of human rockets and alien propulsion systems, Station Alpha represented everything the Zephyrians couldn't understand about human engineering. "The alien power systems are incredibly robust," Vasquez explained to her team via quantum communication link, "but they're designed for stability and predictability. Our modifications trade stability for adaptability and raw power output." The weapons platform she had helped design could reconfigure itself in real time, shifting from defensive to offensive configurations in seconds. It used alien energy projection technology, but with human targeting systems that could track and engage multiple targets using tactics the Zephyrians had never encountered. More importantly, it was controlled by human pilots who thought in ways that alien tactical computers couldn't predict or counter. Captain Sarah Kim piloted the weapons platform with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to fly in Earth's chaotic atmosphere. Unlike Zephyrian pilots, who relied on computer assistance for every maneuver, Kim flew by instinct and experience gained from decades of human aviation development. "Target acquired," she announced, focusing on a Zephyrian cruiser that was moving in the predictable pattern typical of alien fleet operations, engaging with Pattern 7 attack run. Pattern 7 was a human innovation that combined elements from World War II dogfighting tactics, modern air combat maneuvers, and completely theoretical space combat techniques. The result was an attack approach that Zephyrian defensive systems simply couldn't process. The cruiser exploded in a ball of superheated plasma, its shields overwhelmed by weapons that attacked from angles and directions the designers had never considered possible. But the real turning point wasn't happening in space. It was occurring in the underground laboratories and hidden workshops where human scientists had begun to understand something fundamental about their enemies. Professor Marcus Wright worked in a converted mine shaft beneath the Australian outback, leading a team that was studying captured Zephyrian soldiers. What they discovered explained everything about why the invasion had gone wrong. The Zephyrians are not innovators, Wright explained to the international scientific community via encrypted quantum link. They're perfectors. Their entire evolutionary and cultural development has been focused on taking existing concepts and making them more efficient, more powerful, more reliable. Around him, screens displayed the results of weeks of study into Zephyrian psychology, physiology, and cultural patterns. The data painted a picture of a species that had achieved incredible technological advancement through systematic improvement of established principles, but had never developed the ability to create truly revolutionary concepts. They're like a chess player who has memorized every possible game variation but has never learned to improvise. Wright continued. When faced with moves that don't exist in their database, they simply can't respond effectively. This revelation was already being put to use across the globe. Human forces were developing tactics that deliberately violated established military principles, creating scenarios that alien tactical computers couldn't analyze or counter. General Patricia Walsh stood in her command bunker, coordinating what she called the impossible offensive, a global counterattack that would have been considered tactically insane by any conventional military analysis. The beauty of fighting an enemy who thinks logically, Walsh explained to her staff, is that you can defeat them by being deliberately illogical. They can't predict what you'll do if you don't follow any recognizable strategic doctrine. The offensive Walsh was planning involved simultaneous attacks on 17 different fronts, using 17 different tactical approaches, none of which had ever been attempted before in the history of warfare. It was a strategy that required perfect coordination between forces that were deliberately following incompatible doctrines. It was also working perfectly. Colonel David Kim led an assault on an alien ground base using tactics borrowed from ancient Ramong military manuals, combined with weapons technology that wouldn't exist for another century. His forces approached the base in formation that looked like a classical phalanx, but were equipped with energy shields and directed energy weapons. The alien defenders had prepared for every type of attack their computers could analyze. They had not prepared for an assault that combined Bronze Age tactical thinking with Space Age technology. "Advance in formation," Kim commanded. "Remember, they're expecting us to fight like a modern military force. Instead, we're going to fight like our ancestors, except with better weapons." The phalanx advanced with inexorable precision, using formation tactics that confused alien targeting systems while energy weapons carved through defensive positions that had been designed to withstand conventional assault. But perhaps the most devastating human weapon wasn't technological at all. It was psychological warfare conducted by a species that understood both their own strengths and their enemies' weaknesses better than the aliens understood themselves. Dr. Lisa Chun had moved her operations to a mobile laboratory hidden in the Sahara Desert, where her team had been working on something they called cognitive warfare attacks, designed to exploit the fundamental differences between human and Zephyrian thinking. The aliens process information through quantum computing matrices that are incredibly efficient but also incredibly rigid, Chun explained to her team. If we feed their systems data that violates their logical parameters, we can cause cascade failures that spread through their entire network. The weapon Chun's team had developed was pure information, mathematical concepts, and logical paradoxes that caused Zephyrian computer systems to lock up while trying to process impossible equations. It was like introducing a virus into the alien collective consciousness. The effects were devastating. Across the globe, Zephyrian equipment began experiencing systematic failures as their own computers turned against them. Navigation systems provided false coordinates. Communication arrays broadcast gibberish. Weapon systems refused to fire or fired at random targets. Commander Vexstar watched his empire's greatest conquest turn into its most humiliating defeat. The tactical displays showed impossible scenarios. Human forces that should have been extinct were instead conducting offensive operations across 6 continents. Technology that should have taken decades to develop was being deployed in real time by engineers working in ruins and underground bunkers. "Sir," Tethfo reported with barely controlled panic, "the humans have begun launching direct assaults on our fleet positions. They're using spacecraft that combine our technology with their own in ways that exceed our original capabilities." "Show me," Vexstar commanded. Though he dreaded what he might see, the display showed human vessels that looked like they had been assembled from spare parts. Because they had been? But these cobbled-together spacecraft were outmaneuvering and outgunning Zephyrian warships that represented centuries of technological development. Captain Maria Santos piloted her hybrid fighter with skills that had been learned in the crucible of impossible circumstances. Her vessel was part human engineering, part alien technology, and completely unpredictable to enemy targeting systems. "Remember," she broadcast to her squadron, "they build their ships to last forever and follow protocol perfectly. We build ours to win fights and break rules. Use that advantage." Santos's squadron engaged a Zephyrian patrol group in combat that resembled nothing the aliens had ever experienced. Human pilots flew with creativity and intuition that computer-assisted alien pilots couldn't match. They used tactics that violated established space combat doctrine and somehow worked anyway. The patrol group was destroyed in less than 10 minutes, their wreckage adding to the growing collection of alien technology that human engineers were constantly repurposing for their own use. But the decisive moment came when humanity did something that no